I didn't go back home to prove anything. I went back to say goodbye. But by the end of that night, I didn't just bury the past. I exposed every lie my family had been living for years. My name is Alina Carter. I'm 35 years old, and for nearly 8 years I lived as if my family no longer existed. I built a life so far removed from them that even their voices felt like echoes from someone else's story. Then one quiet Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang, and everything I had carefully buried came rushing back. It was my grandmother. Her voice was fragile, thinner than I had ever heard it, and she didn't waste time with small talk. She told me her doctor had given her months, not years, and she wanted to see me one last time. Something inside me shifted in that moment. No matter how much distance I had created, she was the one person I had never stopped loving. I told her I would come. 3 hours after I arrived at her hospital room, still trying to steady my emotions, my younger sister Vanessa walked in like she owned the moment. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't acknowledge the years of silence. Instead, she announced that the entire family would be gathering that night to celebrate her promotion, and I was expected to attend. My parents stood behind her, quietly reinforcing her demand without saying a word. I hesitated, ready to refuse, but my grandmother squeezed my hand and whispered softly, asking me to stay for just one dinner. For her, I said yes. What no one at that table knew was that I had a thin folder tucked inside my bag, something I had never intended to show them. By the end of the night, everything they believed about me would collapse. The drive back to my hometown felt like stepping into a past I had fought to leave behind. The last time I had made that journey, I was 27, heartbroken and exhausted from trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I didn't have any. That was the night my father publicly gave away my education fund to Vanessa, telling everyone I would figure things out on my own. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply walked out and never looked back. That silence lasted for years, and in that time I built something real. I worked harder than I ever had, pushed myself through every setback, and created a career that didn't depend on anyone's approval. Seeing my grandmother again made all of that distance feel small. She was the only one who never doubted me, the only one who quietly believed in me even when I disappeared from their lives. But that peace didn't last long. When my parents and sister entered the room, it felt like stepping back into the same dynamic I had escaped. My mother tried to hug me as if nothing had happened. My father barely acknowledged me. Vanessa greeted me with a smile that felt more like a performance than sincerity. It was clear nothing had changed for them. I had just been absent from their version of the story. Dinner that night unfolded exactly as I expected. Conversations flowed around me, laughter filled the table, and every comment about me was built on assumptions that weren't even close to the truth. Vanessa took every opportunity to present herself as successful, accomplished, and admired, while subtly reducing me to something small and insignificant. When someone asked what I did, she answered before I could, describing me as someone who worked a minor office job, as if my entire life could be summarized in a dismissive sentence. The table laughed lightly, not out of cruelty, but out of belief. They truly thought that was who I was. I didn't correct her, not immediately. I let them talk, let them reveal exactly how little they knew about me, how comfortable they were in their version of reality. It wasn't anger that kept me quiet, it was clarity. For years, I had walked away from conflict, choosing silence over confrontation. But sitting there, I realized something had changed. My silence no longer protected me. It only protected their illusions. Eventually, Vanessa leaned forward with a practiced smile and asked me directly what my actual job was. The table went quiet, all eyes on me, waiting for an answer that would confirm everything they believed. That was the moment I reached for my bag. I moved calmly, deliberately, placing the folder on the table in front of me. The room seemed to hold its breath as I opened it and slid the first document toward her. It was an official announcement, printed on heavy letterhead, detailing the merger of two firms. At the top, clearly stated, was my name as the new managing director. The reaction was immediate and silent at the same time. Vanessa's expression froze as she read the document, her confidence draining with every line. My father stared at the page as if trying to find a flaw in it. My mother looked overwhelmed, as though the reality in front of her didn't match the story she had been telling herself for years. I didn't raise my voice or add anything dramatic. I simply explained that the announcement had gone public that morning and that I hadn't intended to bring it up. I had come for my grandmother, nothing else. Vanessa tried to deny it at first, insisting it couldn't be real, that it was some kind of exaggeration or misunderstanding. But when someone from her own professional circle confirmed the truth, her argument fell apart completely. In that moment, everything shifted. Not because I had attacked her, but because the truth had finally been placed where no one could ignore it. My father accused me of planning the entire situation, of coming back just to humiliate my sister, but I knew that wasn't true. I had stayed quiet for years. This wasn't revenge. It was simply the end of silence. That night didn't feel like a victory. It felt like closure, like finishing something that had been left incomplete for far too long. I didn't feel triumphant or proud. I felt steady, grounded in a way I hadn't before. I had nothing left to prove. The next morning, Vanessa approached me, no longer confident, no longer certain of her place. She asked for help, for understanding, for something to hold on to as her world started to shift. But I couldn't give her what she wanted. Not because I didn't care, but because I had finally learned the difference between compassion and self-respect. A few days later, I sat beside my grandmother on her porch, the only place that ever felt like home. She held my hand and told me something I will carry for the rest of my life, that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the one you keep. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel loss when I heard those words. I felt freedom. I went back to my life, to the work I had built, to the quiet strength I had earned. And for the first time, I realized I hadn't just left my past behind. I had outgrown it.